Okay. Hello all. Hey, thank you for choosing the Dynamics AX Roadmap and Update session. But we've got some stiff competition this year. The very good-looking CRM 2013 session, which is next door. I'm not trying to sell that session at all to you. And then AV, the R2 release just is some great content this year. However, we feel confident that AX is bringing some significant innovation to the market, or in other words, some really cool new stuff. Firstly, it's a pleasure to introduce, in my mind, the most passionate AX guru I've ever met, Doug Daley. Doug is a closet techie. Well, you're not really in the closet yet. He brings a unique blend of technical, business, and commercial, and that experience helps clients bring their AX solution strategy to life. And many of you may have just attended the business change presentation, so I won't go through and present a lengthy presentation of myself. I'm the practice principal for Dynamics here at Intergen, and I'm particularly excited by what Dynamics AX is delivering to the market. So let's, with that, just have a look at what's in store. So Microsoft has committed to regular software release cycles for all the Dynamics products, and the long-term horizon looks very interesting. So just to explain the color schemes of this fancy presentation I have here, both the Microsoft Dynamics AX 2012 R2 release and the Lifecycle Services release have already been brought to market. We're really, really pleased to see the R2 release hit the shores. It's basically delivering a whole host of maturity into the product and really realizing the capabilities of AX 2012 and what it promised to deliver to the market. The next two is the AX 2012 R3 release and Rainier. So we're going to spend some time focusing on that. Look, originally slated for release in late 2013. However, it's a shame to announce that AX 2012 R3 has been delayed. It will be delayed until Q1 2014. This is the third cumulative update since the release to market, which just confirms Microsoft's intent to deliver regular content updates on the product. It does promise a hugely significant increase in capability, which is interesting because AX 2012 is, as many of you already know, is a reasonable beast in itself. So what I'd like to do is just dive into Rainier, which is the next version. So that'll be version 7 as opposed to where we are at version 6 in many respects. And then I'm going to go back to R3, just to confuse everyone. So Microsoft's keeping this very, very, very close to their chest. And we have been instructed quite clearly that we are not to divulge what's coming out in Rainier. Rainier is the code name for AX 2012. Anyone would care to guess what it's going to be called when it's released? It'll be 2014 or 2015. So there we go. Don't go down to the bookies yet. I'll take but the bets you'll take the bets. No, Doug's taking bets. But there are 4 things that I wanted to call out that may or may not affect your decisions. Firstly, cloud. Microsoft has quite clearly stated and banked a lot of its bucks on the cloud. And what they're trying to do is to release more industry-specific solutions into the cloud as part of this release. So you'll probably see specific functions for project management, for instance, that will be pushed out into cloud rather than having on-premise. It is not a full client cloud-based solution. That's what they're adhering to. The next thing, which is pretty interesting, is it's got a grand title of platform independence. It's called a browser. And basically what that means is that we'll be using an internet browser to connect to a Windows 8 design concept UI. So if anyone's familiar with Windows 8 and had looked at some of the apps that Microsoft's come out with, and Indigen's helped them bring them out, have a look at those design concepts, and that will help you sort of build a view of where they're going to be taking the product. The other thing is that there had been a reasonable amount of hysteria in the marketplace about everything's moving to Visual Studio and all of the skill sets that had been built up in the development environment will be lost. Well, X++ does prevail, so for the 2 or 3 people in this room who know what X++ is, I can see one of them sitting over there. Your skills are not lost, Nathan, okay? But what's good is that they are going to be adopting a lot more of the capabilities of Visual Studio and embedding that. All of the compiling will occur in Visual Studio. And the next thing is that a best-in-class lifecycle management. And what does that mean? You're going to see some really, really interesting cloud-based solution called Lifecycle Services, which Doug will demonstrate later in this session. But it's really extending that to drive a whole load of consistency and repeatability in implementations. And hopefully you'll see the value of that shortly. So, I said I was going to go back to R3, and I have. So back to R3, there's a whole host of components that Microsoft have been working on. And firstly, I want to look, I'm going to bring up application framework. So what they've been doing is spending a lot of time and effort in making sure that the framework can support, in essence, mobile. And Chris has spent a long time talking about mobile and confusing us all on HTML5 and so on and so forth. But there are a lot of platform enhancements that have come through in the R3 release, which in essence is going to be providing some different clients. So we've got the mobile POS client, which Case demonstrated at in the keynote. And it's one of the examples of the foundation layers that have been that enable this sort of technology. We've also got mobile companion apps, and I'm going to steal the thunder from Doug, because Doug's going to showcase 3 of them, which is the Timesheets, the Expense, and the Approvals apps. Now, I do believe that we're also at the end. There's going to be Don's going to be doing some more on that as well. Yeah. So we could all really steal everyone's thunder now. And the final one is RF warehousing. So a recent acquisition has allowed them to accelerate their footprint in the warehousing space, and I'll talk to that in a second. And they have a strong RF warehousing client. So what we also have is a bunch of server enhancements here. OData retail server, in essence, is there to provide the mobility platform for retail. And what's interesting is that they're really pushing the system center integration, which in layman's terms means they want to make things simple for deploying retail POS. The final one, I've got framework enhancements, so a mobile integration, more enhancements around that application integration framework for mobility. Okay, so the next layer is the core workloads, and I'll talk about industry workloads in a second. So having a look at some of the core workloads, they've been making some significant investments in this area. Firstly, the budget planning piece. The budget planning capability came in at the beginning of the release of AX 2012, but steadily they've been improving the collaboration capabilities of the budget planning process. And I dare say that at some point it will be significantly mature to supersede the Microsoft Forecaster application. Has anyone heard of Forecaster? One person. Excellent. So, yeah, there's not going to be a huge impact to all of you in the room. There is a whole host of, a whole screed of improvements to the procurement process, and in particular, sort of the RFQ, RFI evaluation processes, and it's particularly focused on the service sector and the public sector. Then, from a supply chain perspective, Microsoft. Does anyone know that Microsoft purchased an organisation called Blue Horseshoe? Yes, a couple of people have nodded. Good. So this has allowed them to create a whole lot of, basically get a significant amount of maturity in the supply chain sector and warehouse management sector. And with that, they've got some advanced warehouse operations and some really good transport route and load planning capabilities. And again, not to do some thunder stealing, but this good man here is going to take us through a little bit of those capabilities. If you hear him talk about wax and tracks, it's nothing to do with any hair removal process. This is actually something. It's warehouse management and transport management for AX. The final piece is that Microsoft is continuing to invest in the industry workloads. So extensions around pricing and promotions, some great pieces around the warehouse management, transport management, and demand planning. Now, the demand planning piece, incidentally, uses Microsoft SQL and
SQL Server Analysis Service.
See, I knew he'd know. So it's going to go through some degrees of maturity before it becomes fully functional. So don't throw away your demand planning tools quite yet. And the final piece for public sector and service sectors is a strong e-procurement piece. So again, sticking on the theme of R3, we're really quite interested in the opportunities that some of these mobile apps can provide. And harking back to what Chris talked about was there are, you should utilise and have an approach for utilising vendor-based mobile applications like these, but also there are going to be specific workloads that you may wish to create yourselves, specific to your business. But these are ones that you really want to look about embedding into your organisation. So they're already available on the marketplace. So anyone who's using Windows 8? Excellent. It's about 20%. So we need more than that. And those will be used. The people who are using that will understand what I mean by marketplace. In the marketplace, you will find these applications. Just search for Dynamics AX, and there they will pop, download, and they exist in demo mode as well as full connectable mode as well. So with that, what I'm going to do is pass over to Doug, who's going to take us through the expense timesheeting and approvals apps. Just.
Okay. So as James said, these are all in the Windows Store today. You can go and download them. The only downside to that is you can't do anything but use them in demo mode until about February next year when the R3 release comes out. But it's an exciting reason to upgrade to R3. So we're going to jump into the apps and have a quick look at them. The apps you're seeing now, and we're going to jump into the Timesheets app to start with, these apps are all Win8, but Microsoft have stated that they will be releasing iOS and Android versions of some of these companion apps in the future. There's also going to be phone-based applications for timesheeting and expenses that hit the store as well, and we're going to see those on multiple platforms, so not just Windows 8. Chris alluded to this earlier. He said that mobile had democratized IT in the organisation to a degree, and so that's why when you log into these apps, the first thing you notice is they're quite personal. I've jumped into Timesheets, and what I'm seeing here is basically a view of my billing over the last few weeks straight away as soon as I log in. Now, I can do a few things with this app, and actually, just to prove to you they are the full versions of the applications, and also to sneakily reset the data, which I forgot to do before this session. If you jump into the account settings, you will see you can turn it off demo mode and connect it to your on-premise AX or hosted AX environment in February next year. But when we look into this, it lets us do a few things. First of all, we've got timesheets that we're busy completing. And we can go ahead and continue to populate that timesheet. And it's a really simple UI. Basically, UAI, for those who wouldn't know, which is most of you, is what we used to call our final mark at the end of Year 12 in Sydney, in New South Wales, Australia. Okay, so if I wanted to create a record for a day, it's as simple as basically clicking on the little plus sign, filling in the hours I've worked, selecting the project and whether it's billable or not, and creating that timesheet entry. But creating timesheets is only partly useful. There's a lot more stuff that I can do with this. So I can see timesheets that have gone off and are in review by a manager, but they haven't been approved yet. I can see recently approved timesheets. And these apps enable collaboration. So where a manager's sort of looked at something and said, hey, there's an issue there, I can jump into the app and straight away, I can look at the history. I get the conversation history with the I submitted it, he rejected it, or she rejected it, and I can jump in and see, well, it looks like I've got a problem. I've billed 15 hours where I probably should have only billed 1.5. Now, it's pretty easy to see where that's going to be. It's this big 21-hour slot here. Once we go to that timesheet entry, we can quickly correct it, update the entry, and resubmit it for approval. As you move through these apps, you get contextual information everywhere that you go. So, for example, I see by project a little pie chart, and it's just to give you a snapshot of whether you're making the right decision when you go and submit this or approve something. Okay, so that's the timesheeting app. Now there's a few others. We can have a look at the expenses app. We're going to get expenses on the phone, and basically expenses on the phone is going to be designed for expense capture. So you're in a restaurant eating, you want to capture the bill, you do it with your phone, but you might not reconcile the expenses at that point to a particular trip. The code might not exist yet. So the idea with this app is that you can use it both to create new expenses, i.e. you can look really dorky and carry your tablet around taking photos of receipts, or you can actually use it to reconcile trips that you've already done. So creating an expense report is quite simple. You put in the purpose, you take photos of the receipts, you put in details about them. I won't show you that. What I'm actually going to show you is diving into my unreconciled expenses. So I've got a bunch of expenses that are older than 4 weeks, so I've obviously missed my expense claim for a month there. And I can go and tag a few of those that were related to a trip and quickly add them to an expense report as simply as doing this. I put in the details of the trip and create that expense report. And that I'm done. I can also view all the attachments that I've got related to other trips. Now finally, if I jump into the approvals application, the approvals application highlights that context sensitivity better than anything else that's being released in this first wave. It gives me different types of approvals that are sitting waiting. So I've got expense approvals here that I need to approve for my staff. I've got project budget revisions, tax invoice proposals, and depending on what type of object I'm approving, I get different information when I dive into it. So if we have a look at this Eastside Cycles team event, first of all, I get a little pie chart with a snapshot of expenses by categories, which is a sanity check on 90% of this trip is an entertainment cost. I also get the ability to communicate with someone directly from here. So it's integrated with Link. I can pop open a Link session, IM session, and chat to the person if I've got a question about that expense report at this point. I can also see any receipts that have been attached, so I can check that the paperwork's in order. And then finally, I can have a look at project impact. If it's a project with a budget, I can check the impact on the budget of approving this expense report before I actually go and approve it. It's going to be fantastic for getting declined expense reports, this tool. And then when I'm done, it's as simple as hitting approve. So that's basically a high-level overview of these apps that are coming with R3. They're pretty exciting. They certainly are going to make a big wave of difference for people trying to interact with the application. If you're still on R2 with AX 2012, even today you can get email approvals sent to a phone, again through Azure. All these applications work through Azure, but the data's not stored. So even though it's going through Singapore, there's no data sovereignty issues. It's basically just a communication pipeline between a device out in the world and an on-premise or hosted AX environment. And with that, we might jump back into the slide deck. And what we're basically going to cover off next is a little bit of an overview of WaxTracks. James alluded to this earlier. It's an acquisition from a company, called Blue Horseshoe. And there's four key things I wanted to tell you about WaxTracks to start with. They're native embedded AX WMS and TMS solutions, which means they're written in X++. They're part of the core product code base. They're not add-on solutions integrated to AX. Now, they were acquired by Microsoft from Blue Horseshoe for release as part of the R3 release early next year. And they're designed to enable complex warehouse and distribution operations in AX without having to turn to dedicated best-of-breed WMS solutions or extensively customize the core product. In terms of pedigree, Blue Horseshoe, the founders of Blue Horseshoe basically come from three of the leading best-of-breed WMS solutions on the market. So names like Manhattan and Scale, for those that are in the distribution business. So WaxTracks basically give you an extremely significant and comprehensive overhaul of the entire core AX inventory and warehouse management functionality. What we're going to see is embellishments with configurable workflows for wave processes, pick, pack, and dispatch. We're also finally going to get the concept of load management in AX, which a lot of systems have had for a number of years. So ultimately what WaxTracks should be able to deliver for businesses is a solution that can be leveraged to increase labour efficiency, to reduce inventory holding, and also increase fill rates. And hopefully in doing so, get a better return on your assets, okay? Which of course means more profit and more revenue. What I wanted to do is a bit of a deep dive into some of the features, because we're not going to show you WaxTracks today, but we do have some screenshots and we'll walk you through them. So in terms of standard AX inventory management, Wax augments the concept of a location with the ability to do things like manage spaces by both physical dimensions and actual physical capacity of that space. It also gives us the ability to enable or prohibit mixed SKUs and batches within an individual location. And it gives us license plate control, so we have traceability of license plates from an inbound dock right through to an outbound dock, which is more relevant for 3PL style operations. Actually, in addition to that, we get stocking limits by location and unit of measure. And we also finally get the concept of in-location quarantine with inventory status flags. In addition to these sort of base things, we get big improvements for put away. So we've got configurable directed put away logic. And then one of the most exciting things I think with Wax is the cycle counting capability. So it introduces the ability to generate a cycle count based on item characteristics or location characteristics, but it also gives you the ability to trigger cycle counts based on events that signify there's probably something wrong with the stock. And that's things like a put away exception or a short pick or you finding damaged stock in a location. I spoke about configurable workflow processes a few minutes ago, and what you're seeing on the screen at the moment is a screenshot of what we call work templates in Wax. And what they let us do is configure workflows in the warehouse for inbound processes, outbound processes, and internal warehousing operations. We can also define them for specific processes for specific groups of products or types of customers or specific vendors if we have scenarios that we need to cater for individually. In addition to that, all of these processes are executable using inbuilt RF warehousing capability that will come with R3. So that's mobile warehousing devices, scanners basically. We also get route planning. So the product caters for planning multiple segment routes. It also caters for multiple modes of transport and making multiple stops along the way. There's rate shopping capability to help you get a greater return or maximise your return on freight costs. And there's multiple algorithms that are used for the route planning process, and there's just a few of them that I've thrown up on the screen there. All of this is combined with a constraint model that's used to select the most optimal or most appropriate route for some goods that you're about to ship out the door. We also get appointment scheduling, so you get the concept of being able to set up time slots for your inbound and outbound docs. It's a simple drag and drop interface for this appointment scheduling calendar, and it lets you do both soft and hard reservations of time slots. It also gives you a single consolidated inbound and outbound view of your operations. It's things like this that start to give you a lot of control over your labour planning in the warehouse, because you're starting to plan by load and by time slot in your distribution operation. The other thing that you get with this is driver check-in and check-out, which means you can start to apply penalties or detention for drivers that exceed their allotted time slots. Not something that everyone will use, but this is now going to become part of Core AX. The other thing that we did allude to is load planning. So you get the ability to build up your outbound operations by outbound load based on the capacity of a particular truck that's going to depart at some time during the day. And last but not least, you get significant improvements with R3 and freight reconciliation. So you get the ability to basically automatically match electronic invoices from your freight carriers to the shipment data manifested during the shipping process, and where you get matches, automate the payment process to carriers based on that. You can also then apportion freight to particular invoices and bill it to a customer, or you can choose to accrue or expense that freight as part of the manifesting process. So that's really a bit of a snapshot of WaxTracks. If you've got any more questions, especially if you're in a manufacturing or distribution environment, happy to have a chat to you later in the day about that. But I'm going to hand back to James now to talk about something that we've been working on that I think is fairly exciting. All yours.
Thank you, Doug. It is fairly exciting. Over the last 8 or 9 AX 2012 E&D phases that we've done, we've picked up a bit of experience around how best to set the system up and what works, what doesn't work. And what we wanted to do was basically to drive a lot more consistency and repeatability into our projects. In essence, that's the panacea for any supplier. We really need to try and drive a degree of known entities when it comes to these implementations. So we invested in something called Ensure Accelerators. So some of the key principles, it's relatively common sense, to be brutally honest with you. And you're probably asking us why on earth we didn't do it before. Response is that we didn't have the technologies there to make this really, really come to light. And I think you'll see when Doug takes you through it precisely what we mean. But first of all, we want to adapt standard processes and best practice. In essence, what we're talking about is we're templating what is common. We want to repeat success across other organisations. So let's take on some of the standards that we've worked on in multiple industries and wrap that into a layer. And we want to focus on what's important. We want to actually enable our project teams, joint project teams, to focus on the 20% that drives the 80% value in organisations. And most importantly, let's keep it simple. So, the technology behind it all. Microsoft have released basically 3 pieces of deployment tool sets that really have brought this thing to life. Firstly is Microsoft Lifecycle Services, which is in essence, it's an Azure-based tool set that allows us to plan, monitor, interact with the whole life cycle of the implementation, right from the outset through to support and ongoing. Then there's Microsoft Rapid Start. So in its rawest form, and I mean it is pretty raw, it needs some help. Microsoft Rapid Start is a configuration tool, but it also provides an opportunity for partners like Intergen to actually develop their own templates, their own frameworks within it, and that's where our IP comes into it. And the next thing, which is a super cool tool in my view, which is Task Recorder Plus. Are we showing Task Recorder Plus? Oh. So I think anything that makes my job easier is cool. So in essence, it records tasks. But the next thing is that the Ensure Accelerator sits on top of these three core technologies. And what it is, is basically we have three primary accelerators: the finance, the trade and logistics, and retail and point of sale. And in essence, what we've done is we've looked at what's common across some of these core processes. We've created a work breakdown structure, an organizational breakdown structure for those processes, and just predefined it. So what does a standard project look like versus an accelerator-based project? So if we look at a standard, and what we would used to do, and to be honest still do on some projects, because accelerators won't necessarily fit for all, we would take in essence a blank sheet of paper, and we come in and say, right, what do you need? How do you want to run X, Y, Z? And we design up those requirements 100% specific to the client. And of course, there's going to be custom-specific coding and customer-specific configuration. And there will be customer-specific data migration scripts and load tools. And of course, from a support perspective, it's highly customer-specific. From an Intergen accelerator perspective, if we look at it, what we're doing is we're bringing a best practice framework to play. What we're doing is we're saying, we hope that 80% of the total requirements could be probably matched through this pre-configured approach. That allows us to take all of that effort, joint teams effort, and focus it on the hard stuff, the stuff actually that drives the value to your organization. It means that we get some standard functions, some repeatability, some pieces that we know that work, and we can basically have used on a number of different sites. It allows us to have standard data migration and standard config load tools, and I couldn't emphasize more how important the standard data migration tool sets would be in AX 2012. Certainly we've invested a lot of money in trying to get those things right. And then the standard simplified and supportable environment. That's what pops out the other end. So whilst this can be used to shorten project timelines for kind of mid-sized projects, we also see it playing quite a reasonable part in the larger projects. It'll help as a starting point, from a starting point from which we can do full requirements analysis and the like. And it's actually not too dissimilar to the way SAP would take the process, right? They'll come in with their template, and thou shalt do it this way, and that's what you do. So let's see some of the tools and the Intergen Ensure solution in action. So for the clever stuff, I have to hand over to the good man, Doug, who's going to take us through what it's all about.
Okay, so, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. I've only spoken for 5 minutes. Basically, there's 3 things I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you Task Recorder Plus, I'm going to show you Rapid Start services, and I'm going to show you Lifecycle services for Microsoft Dynamics. And I'm actually going to start in a different order to what was on the slide, just to make life as confusing as possible. We're going to start with Task Recorder Plus. There's 3 things I'm hoping you'll take out of this demo, and ultimately it's that what we're trying to achieve here is immersing you in the product from day one of the project. We don't want you to be seeing the product for the first time at the end of a design phase or in design workshops after you've done 3 months of analysis. The next thing is we wanted to focus on you making the significant decisions, not making every decision. Really, we should be able to make a lot of very common decisions for you and you just tick and confirm that you're happy with them. The last thing is we wanted to break down barriers of collaboration, and thankfully Microsoft's on the same page with this, and the tool set is evolving to enable all of this. So we're going to start in Task Recorder Plus. I'm conscious I haven't got a lot of time left, and this is pretty exciting stuff. So you get a sandbox environment typically when you start an AX 2012 project, and this is what your sandbox environment would look like if you started one today. You'd log in and you'd see a predefined set of processes in this thing called Task Recorder Plus. Who's used Task Recorder previously in any version of AX? Yep, so a whole bunch of you. This looks very, very similar. The difference is that we've now got a whole lot more buttons on the screen. We have a process breakdown that we can record processes against. And if I drill into this, for example, if I have a look at accounts receivable, we've predefined a whole lot of accounts receivable processes. If I look at something like recording customer payments, we can see different types of customer payments like local currency payments, foreign currency payments, open payments. Now, just like in the old task recorder, I can use this to generate a Word document. So we've pre-recorded all of these. If I pick processing an open customer payment and hit the little Word document button there, in the background, AX is now generating a Word document with screenshots that describe how to perform that process. It's actually just happening in the background here. Whilst we wait for it to generate that Word document, which will only take another few seconds, I'm going to show you that something else that we can do. We can hit the play button here, and when it comes back to life, you'll see a video has been recorded of that process being performed in the application. All of this is just done by hitting the record button and going and doing the process in the application itself. Do you think this is cool compared to the old task recorder? And is this something you'd get benefit out of? So it's available for any version of AX 2012. It's a hot fix that we can deploy on any version of AX 2012, so you can get access to Task Recorder Plus. It actually gets cooler than this, but you're going to have to hold your breath for a few minutes before we get there. And of course, here is my Word document that I've just gone and generated that describes that process being performed. For those who have seen Task Recorder, you've already seen this bit. Okay, I want to emphasize that this is a full standard, common accepted good practice finance framework that we've predefined with all the processes recorded. So you can immerse yourself in the product from the start of your project. When you get a design document that you have to review, you can sit down with that design document. You can actually walk through those steps in the application. If you can't remember how to do something, you can jump into Task Recorder, hit playback, and a pretty similar process to the one that we've designed for you appears on the screen and it walks you through how to do it. So it's hugely powerful in immersing you in the application. But that's only part of the picture. We also needed to be able to basically focus on making the significant decisions, as I said before. So we went and defined a baseline configuration. For those who have used AX 2012, they'll know it's not easy to move configuration from one environment to another. So we used a tool to do this called Rapid Start Services. The holy grail of this tool is that you as a customer log in, you answer a questionnaire, you tell it which modules you want to use or processes you want to perform, and it goes and configures AX for you. It's a long, long way from being that tool. What it is, though, is a tool that we as consultants can use and walk through with you with predefined configuration in it. So I've just logged into the tool. Actually, I pre-did it to save us some time. And I've come into a questionnaire for setting up the AR module. And part of that is looking at how I process customer payments. And I can answer some questions and populate templates with configuration. And one of the ones that I've got is methods of payment. I can hit the preview button and see what methods of payment I've got configured. And we can see I've got 5 there: cash, check, credit, direct credit, and an international transfer. Okay, so I can actually go and download this file. Oops, that's the wrong one. Download this file to my computer. It downloads as an Excel document. And when I open it, I can see that configuration documented here. To save us a bit of time, I've already keyed in the updated version of this sheet. It's sitting here. I'm just going to dive into it, and you can see I've just keyed in a new method of payment for direct debiting customers. For all these fields, where they're drop-downs, they're actually drop-down lists that you can select from, pre-populated with all the AX data. When you modify AX, you can upload those modifications or changes in metadata to RapidStart, so it has all the tables and enums and lookups that you have in your AX system will be in RapidStart services and configurable. So I've got this updated template with a new method of payment, and I want to upload this into RapidStart. So I simply pick that updated file, which is sitting on my desktop here. Got to remember which file to click. And it's going and uploading that file to RapidStart, and I can save it now that I've completed that question. And then I can hit this preview button in a second when it finishes saving. And what you're going to basically see is that RapidStart's been updated with my new direct debit method of payment. So how do we go from here to a configured AX system? Well, it's really simple, and I can't get it to connect to my AX VM from the hotel internet, so I can't show it to you. But we hit the load button, it connects to your on-premise AX instance or hosted AX instance. You select the company that you want to populate with this configuration and press the load button, and it goes away and configures the AR module for you. What this has done is it's allowed us to spin up demo companies and prototype environments in 2 days where we would have previously spent 7 or 8 days. So it's a huge time saving for configuration, especially if you're configuring 12 companies, because you can load this, you press the load button 12 times rather than manually keying in that configuration into 12 companies. So it's a huge time saver. And it means that because we've pre-populated a set of templates with all these decisions like common methods of payment, common terms of payment, you're only focusing on making significant decisions like your GL structure and posting to your GL structure rather than every single decision throughout the project lifecycle. The last thing I wanted to show you is this thing called Lifecycle Services, which has been sitting here open for a while. No doubt it has forgotten that I'm logged into it, and it's going to ask me to log in again. But actually, no, it's remembered me. Fantastic. So Lifecycle Services is a collaboration platform for us and you. I'm just going to show you a few snippets because we've only got 5 minutes left and I can't show you the whole thing, but it lets you do things like, who's been through AX 2012 licensing in the room? Yeah, okay. It's a challenge to work out what licenses you need to buy. With this tool, we can sit down with you and we can talk to you about, okay, which areas of the business are we implementing AX for? We're implementing for purchasing the warehouse. Okay, let's just go through and profile your organisation. So who have you got in the company? Well, you've got a materials manager. How many do you have? We've got 3 sites. We've got 1 at each site. We've put in 3 users. It already knows what type of CAL a materials manager needs or a buying agent needs. So then once we've put all this information in and I press the report button, it goes away and generates a report for the number of licenses you need to buy as an organisation by user and role. Where it's roles that might use devices like someone in the warehouse, a storeman, it'll give you the option to select a device license and enter how many devices you have rather than user, so you very quickly build up your licensing profile. It's not all the product does. Also does things like system diagnostic. So I've got this connected to an on-premise AX environment. It's monitoring that environment and it's telling me about issues with the environment. If I dive into messages, I can see the issues I have with my current environment. For example, this one's about to run out of space on the database server, but it also gives me tips about how to optimize the performance of the system. So I can look at things like this message. It's telling me that I should set the entire table cache property on a bunch of tables in the system because they meet a set of criteria, which in this case is they don't have a lot of data in them, I access them all the time, better to have them in cache than continually query the database. It even tells me the tables that I should go through and enable these things for. What else does it do? Okay, let's say you're a solution architect on the customer side and you want to make sure that you want to keep an eye on the customization that's being performed, you can dive into customization analysis. You upload the model files of the customizations that we've performed for you or our teams have jointly performed. I've got one here. And it does some analysis of that. It's quite similar to best practice checks that we have in AX at the moment, but it gives you a much better report on the output of those checks. So first of all, it's telling me the number of tables, classes, forms, things that I've modified, where I've got errors, and I can go and grab an Excel document. Sorry, little bug here with the product at the moment. And that Excel report tells me all about this particular model file with a customization in it. It tells me about the issues at the top and whether, sorry, I scrolled too quickly there, whether they're performance issues or upgrade issues or quality metrics that we've got issues with. It tells me about the number of new versus modified objects. I can drive into that issues list and see a list of suggested mitigating actions for those particular issues. This is the sort of thing that even in a PMO capacity, you can leverage these tools to get more information about the customization that's being performed. There's a pivot table of top error counts. I can drill into visualizations that tell me things like the type of issue by object type. So it's a really nice, simple, accessible way to get that information and to enable collaboration throughout a project lifecycle. Especially in something like a development phase where in some projects we close the doors and we disappear into our little shell and come back when we've got some working code for you. Last but not least, I wanted to talk about the business process modeler. I said at the start that this gets cooler, and that Task Recorder Plus does get cooler because I can use it to export a reference model for my processes. I've got one here, and actually I've got some processes in there like, for example, uploading a GL journal. And I can drill into a particular process like validating and posting the GL journal. This is the same process breakdown you saw before. When I drill into that, I get a Visio process flow describing that process, as well as the video we saw before of that process that I can pop open and view. You can give your whole project team access to this to review processes visually rather than in documentation form. I've also got a description of that process. All of this is generated just by clicking through AX and performing the process. And it tells me that I opened a general journal, I created or updated lines, I validated that journal, and then finally I posted it. What's here is not just fixed. First, I can export it to Visio, so I can use this in printed documentation, or I can export it to Visio as a baseline starting point for business process maps and then modify it. I can also actually edit this chart itself. So I can go into edit mode, I can edit the process description, I can add additional steps to the process. I can do even more than that. Let's say I do change this process. By changing this process, I've just done something that's different to the reference process model that ensures shipping in its accelerators. Every time I make one of those changes, it creates a gap because it's a gap to the reference process model. I can see a list of changes I've made against Insure's reference process model that we need to then take into consideration for training materials that won't meet the Intergen templates, data migration we may need to change, configuration we may need to change. So you start to get a very aligned, very collaborative process that's, as we see it, a real game changer for the way we deliver AX projects. So I hope that was really useful to you. And we're out of time. I just wanted to leave you with some closing remarks. I always press that wrong button, which goes back to the start of the slide deck. I'll get it right one day. Closing remarks. I always ask the same question, what next? Quick show of hands. Who's running AX in the room currently? Who's on AX 2009 or earlier? Yeah, okay, great. 3 or 4? Okay, cool. Who's running AX 2012? And is anyone on R2 or everyone on a pre-R2 version? Okay, great. So a few things. Chris spoke about it this morning. It's a really good time to be starting to think about mobile scenarios, especially those very specific high ROI line of business apps that you can build out on top of your AX and CRM stack. Also think about adding dynamic CRM. I mean, we did a scenario recently where we had someone like something on Facebook. Liking something on Facebook flowed into CRM, where some direct marketing, and it was liking actually to get an invite to a VIP sales opening event. You liked the event on Facebook. When you did that, you got a message into your Facebook inbox sent via Click Dimensions in CRM that also gave you a coupon code for a special deal in store and all the details of the opening event. At the same time, you're put into AX through the Dynamics connector between CRM and AX as a customer in AX, attached to a special price group that gave you special promo pricing at the Sales Day launch event. So there's huge capability for complementing AX with CRM if you're not already using CRM today. Focus on enhancing your role-based experience. You can get a lot of value out of making people more efficient. Role centers are designed to do that. If you're not running role centers today, it's worth thinking about putting them in just for things like queues and having people using links from that role center to dive into the forms that they use commonly. It's quick to get these things up and running, and they add a lot of value to the core product in terms of a role-based experience. Upgrade, it's a big thing, and I don't have any time left to talk to you about it. If you are running AX 2009 or earlier, come and grab me throughout the day at some point, and I'm happy to talk to you about upgrade scenarios. It's always a big task, but there's a huge amount of value that can be gained for 2009 customers with AX 2012, especially with the R3 release. The feature set is phenomenally broader than it was in prior versions. And last but not least, you can always add ISV solutions to your AX solution that give you point solutions to drive more value in areas that are challenging. Think about things like demand planning or warehouse mobility. And if you have got specific gaps, it's a good time to talk to us about what we can do to solve those with ISV solutions on AX 2009 or 2012. And that is it. So thank you very much. Feel free to stay around and ask any questions that you've got. And our details are on the slide deck, which will be published if you want to chat to us about any of this content later on.